Welcome back to 333 Motoring. Back in the garage, we're doing another video today with the F80 M3. We're going to be doing some spark plugs today. So a couple things on spark plugs. Of course, you can go to the dealership, get the genuine BMW ones. That'll run you about $180 to $200 based on the last time I called and checked on the price. You're going to need a couple tools as well. So with the F80, they recommend a swivel socket, the 14 millimeter for the F80. I believe it is a 12 tooth is what's going to fit best on the actual spark plugs that go in the F80s. So you're going to need that. You're going to need a gap tool. I picked this one up off of Amazon. So if you could see it, so basically you can thread it through. So it's really easy. I tried it on one just to test it out. So it fits anywhere from a 12 millimeter up to a 16 millimeter. So it's somewhat of a universal spark plug tool, so it's not that bad. It came with the little gapping fingers here. So let's see which ones. We're looking for right here. Oh, a little further up. Let's see, we want the 022. There it is. Okay, so this is the gap we're looking for. Okay, so now talking about plugs themselves, let's go back to that first topic. So you can go to the dealership, get the genuine BMW ones. These ones are NGK. They are the laser iridium, and they're the, let's see if you can see the model. This one's got a little bit bigger. So here's the model and the number. The reason I got these ones is I was doing some reading online. I have the boot mode tune. I got the GTS tune on the car currently, but it recommends that if you're running a tune with under 30 pounds of boost, that you should go with these NGK plugs that are really good, but the gap should be 0.022 or 0.023 is ideal for these cars. So if you are running a tune, you may want to look into this setup and this gap when you go to change your spark plugs. So that's what I'm going to run this time, and then we'll do a follow-up video and see how the car runs. I'm hoping it runs great. So with that being said, let's gap these things first. So what I was getting at earlier is I did a test just to see how this tool would actually work. It works good, but there's also recoil on the spark plug itself. So when you actually go to bend this thing and gap it, it's going to bend this thing down, but there's also going to be a little bit of spring back. So it's a little bit of trial and error, but the way this thing works, let's loosen it up. Basically, you just lay the spark plug in here, like so. And I'm doing it with the orientation of the arch. I'm putting it down, so if you can see it here. And this orientation, I think that's going to give it the most accurate bend. So let's tighten it up. Okay, that's it. They're all set. 0.022 on all 6 of the NGK. And I will say this tool was really nice to have. Made it really easy to gap these things. So there is quite a bit of spring back, to be honest. So as you can see from the playback when you watch it, there was a lot of adjusting, checking, adjusting again, checking. So I just didn't want to go too far because if you go too far, it's tough. So I just tried to be as consistent as I could the way the measuring, the little finger slid in between the electrode, to make sure it's like similar kind of pressure on all of them. So I think they're gapped pretty well. So next up is going to go into the engine bay here, and are going to start to get access to the old plugs, remove them, inspect them, and then get these plugs in there and torqued down. So let's go. Okay, so in order to get to the spark plugs, we have some preliminary tasks we need to carry out. So we got to remove the cover plate off of the valve cover. Now I'm going to start to remove the intake and charge pipes. So pulling out the intake first. I have an aftermarket intake, so if you do have your intake box, you're probably going to have to take off the carbon fiber strut bar prior to doing that. I have an aftermarket intake here, so I took the intake cone or the filter itself off. Then I pulled the arm or the connector to the intake off. And when you take the intake and the charge pipes off, grab yourself a rag and put it into the actual turbo inlets, because you do not want to have any parts falling inside your turbocharger. That would not be good. So once the charge pipes and intake are removed, we can then pull out the strut bar, and then we pulled out the strengthening bar or stiffening bar here in the back, the aluminum bar towards the rear. Once you get that off, it's going to give you access to this plastic cover that sits beneath it. And what that's going to give us space for is for the number 6 cylinder spark plug, because it's literally underneath that. So that, I think that's 6 bolts to pull that off. Then we'll remove that cover, that shroud. You'll see it coming off here in a second video. Yep, pops right off there, and we'll have access to all the plugs. Okay guys, so next step, we're going to start removing the spark plugs. So a couple things to note here. They want you to use a special tool, but really you just need a wobble socket. So I picked this one up off of Amazon, 14 millimeter. It's a wobble socket, and it's a 12 tooth, which is what the spark plugs are that come in the F80. Now one step here prior to actually getting them pulled out is, once you pull out the coil here, get some compressed air and blow it in there while the spark plug is still in there. Obviously we don't want to blow a bunch of crap into the motor. That is not good. So we'll get some compressed air, we'll blow it out. I'm just going to go one cylinder at a time. Removal, and then new spark plug in. And now as for torque, I'll show you guys on here. So the tightening torque for the spark plugs, I believe ours is an M14 for the F80, 30 plus or minus 3 Newton meters. Convert it to foot-pounds if you wish. The M12 125 thread is 23 plus or minus, so I'm probably going to tighten mine to 27 Newton meters, which is kind of right in the middle of both these, within tolerance. All right, let's get to it. Okay, so now let's start removing these plugs. So did a little cleanup work here with some compressed air and my shop vac. So the order of operations here, I'm just going to go cylinder by cylinder, removing the spark plug, putting the new one in, torquing it down, putting the coil pack back together, completely wrapping each one up one at a time. So prior to pulling the spark plug out, you want to blow the cylinder where the spark plug is with compressed air before you remove it, to get any debris out of there. And then when you're backing out each spark plug, I noticed on each and every one, my car just has over 50,000 miles. So I'm assuming these were the original plugs, I would imagine. So anyway, or just based on the look of them when they came out. So as I was loosening them up, I just took my time and went slow. And the plug itself generated a lot of dust and debris in the in that cylinder well where the spark plugs go. So I took my shop vac, and you can see here in the video here, even though it's sped up, I actually put the shop vac right on the hole itself and just kind of pressurized it and sucked up all that debris for each of the plugs, so just to make sure I didn't have that. I didn't want to tighten the new plugs in there with that debris still in the cylinder. So here we go, cylinder by cylinder, 1 through 6, working our way along. Now that all the spark plugs are in and torqued down, we're gonna put everything that we took off to get to the spark plugs back on. So we're gonna start here with this plastic plate here in the back. I think there's about 6 bolts that go into that. They're 10 millimeter. Now that we got that in, we're gonna start getting the charge pipes on. It's easier to do the charge pipes without the carbon brace on, just because you have so much more room here. So I'm getting the rear charge pipe back on first, because you have the least amount of room back there by that one. Yeah, if you have an aftermarket charge pipe, I highly recommend getting a wobble socket for that one and a long extension. As you saw that I had there, it makes it a lot easier to get that back installed there. So now we're putting in the intake on. Again, this is aftermarket. If you have your intake box, it's similar protocol. There's a plastic shroud that goes down on the bottom to the turbo, and then you have that has an expansion up to 3 inch to where your intake is. And then we got the front charge pipe on. Again, those are T30s down there at the bottom that they connect to the vehicle itself. We're going to put the cover plate back on. Now we have the aluminum stiffening bar going in the back. Then we'll get all the suspension or the EDC hooked back up. No problem. Get everything bolted in. Just take your time with the wiring. Make sure you don't get anything pinched. Get all those back on. Get all of our plastic shrouds and coverings back together. And then we're getting the carbon brace back on. These are all 13 millimeter, 2 short ones in front, 3 on each side in the back. And these plastic shrouds, 3 10 millimeter half turns, and we're all done. It's back together. Hey everyone, I hope you found the video helpful. If you're looking to do the spark plugs in your F80 M3, going to do a little startup here and some small revs just to make sure everything sounds good and the car is idling good. So enjoy the audio. If you have any comments or questions on the procedure, drop me a comment. If not, we'll catch you next time on 333 Motoring.